This sitting is resumed. Prior to the break for lunch, this Honourable Chamber was debating 4 land resolutions as part of a cognate debate. We shall return to those. Honourable Member for St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to join the debate on the land resolution that seek to acquire a parcel of land at Lot 1 Bushall Yard Gap in the parish of St. Michael, and indeed for the public purpose of youth participation in community improvement projects known as the Building Blocks Project. And Mr. Speaker, let me at this time thank publicly those officers in the former Ministry of Small Business Entrepreneurship and Commerce who indeed did this country well under my tenure as minister, and indeed those statutory corporations, including the Trust Loan Fund, which was a signature project by the Labour Party government, and indeed all the stakeholders, Chamber of Commerce, and everyone who served the purpose well in terms of building out small business in this country. And Mr. Speaker, I have moved in the Prime Minister's wisdom of reshuffling this cabinet, a dynamic team that she has. And I've been placed in that wonderful place called the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Community Empowerment. And I want to thank the former Minister of Youth and Community Empowerment, because when I look at this resolution this morning, I saw his name written all over it. I saw his passion for the youth. I saw his commitment to empowering the young people in this country written all over this resolution. And what is before the House is part of the empowerment of our young people in this country. And I want to thank him for coming up with this Building Blocks program. Because, yes, you can give him a clap, because I think he did a wonderful job. The member for Christchurch, West Central. And indeed, this Building Blocks project is being developed as a means of providing a comprehensive community-based social intervention strategy to address the problems of unemployment and incidents of crime and violence which have been plaguing various communities across Barbados, and indeed in which our young people have been both victims and perpetrators. And Mr. Speaker, I wish to start on the premise that this government, in its manifesto, while in opposition, articulated a policy for the empowerment of young people in this country. And I can read from this wonderful book, because it says
Which book is that, Honourable Member?
The Manifesto, the Barbados Labour Party, Building the Best Barbados Together, BLP 2018, the best for Barbados. And it is already a document of the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to be explanatory to the public with this wonderful document. And the Barbados Labour Party is firmly in the belief that if given the opportunity, our young people have the energy and creativity to solve many of our island's problems and take our country to a prosperous future. We articulated our vision in this manifesto to create new policies that empower Barbados' young people socially and economically, and ultimately transform Barbados into the best place in the world for young people to live, have a family, work, and to do business. That is articulated in the manifesto. We went further to commit to creating and evaluating national programs that tackle new threats to the well-being of young people, including issues of mental health and lack of self-confidence and identity and excessive social media consumption. But, Mr. Speaker, the Building Blocks program, and we're specifically speaking to the one now at Bush Hall, we're acquiring the lands to build out some 6 kiosks, ranging from bars, cosmetology, hairdressing, and indeed growing of produce as a community-based project engaging in agricultural production. So, Mr. Speaker, this Building Blocks program is indeed a fundamental program as we seek to empower our young people. And I want to commend again the Ministry of Youth and Community Empowerment, now the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment, for the 4 projects that have, I will say, they're about to be handed over to the small businessmen and women in this country. And I will list the 4. In the IV, the parliamentary representative for St. Michael East would be proud to know that he has some 3 kiosks focusing on hairdressing, shop, cosmetology in the IV. Parkinson Field, the member for St. Michael Southeast, would be proud to know that they too have some 4 or 5 kiosks within Parkinson Field. And then we go to Britain's Hill, where we have 4, and Britain's Hill straddles the member for Christchurch West and St. Michael South Central, and also St. Michael South. And then we go to Silver Hill, where we have the 4th project about to be handed over. So lots of work has been done in this Building Blocks program, and it's not just about building blocks or building these kiosks for people to occupy. It is solving a social problem in this country. Because, Mr. Speaker, when you analyze what has gone wrong in this country, we have seen high unemployment rate among young people, lack of recreational and sporting facilities, deficiency of functioning community organization, and a proliferation of substance abuse, low academic achievement of young people. And these are just among some of the challenges that we are faced within communities. And, I recently, Mr. Speaker, looked at some statistics that really puzzled me. And there are some 862 young men in jail today. And there are 650 of them are under 35 years of age in jail today. And I'm saying to you, Mr. Speaker, had we seen it fit years ago to open our community centers and engage in these Building Blocks programs, I am confident that this number would be less. And as we seek to build out the 30 blocks or even more, the member said 30, but Mr. Speaker, with a new minister comes a new mandate. And while I would praise the member for Christchurch West Central, I would want to let him know that I intend to broaden the base and increase the scale. Because for me to reduce this number, and for this government to really reduce this number of 862 young men in jail, and for us to reduce, Minister for Christchurch East Central don't want to hear this, $29 million is spent on prison, and he knows this. So if we can reduce this number, then we reduce the amount of money. $29 million we are spending after the fact, as opposed to spending before to prevent. So the whole aspect of creating these building blocks and monitoring and evaluating the success and the progress, I strongly believe that the time has come when our workers, the youth commissioners, members, the community aides within the Ministry of Youth, we shouldn't be walking around with any paper anymore. This is the age of technology. We are digitizing everything. When they're in the field, in these Building Blocks programs should be made to produce information that is captured in one central place that we can analyze and we can monitor the success. And that is where we are going. So the Ministry of Youth, while a lot of work has been done, we intend to take it further and indeed analyze the progress of these building blocks. It's not just about building a block and handing over. We are about to create block entrepreneurs, blockpreneurs in this country. We recognize that these young people, and people often criticize young people, but once you invest in young people and you show them that that you care and they indeed are part of building out this wider ecosystem, then you will see young people being engaged meaningfully, as opposed to us criticizing young people, keep saying they're involved in crime and they're involved in all these deviant behaviors. But we have to start in the schools. We have to start in the schools. So while I applaud the blockpreneurship program for 18 to 35-year-old, we have to capture these young people and inculcate a culture of financial literacy and business literacy in them from the primary school. So I'm here coming from an area whereby we were focusing on financial literacy, and it is articulated in our manifesto as we seek to build out Bajan youth as global citizens. We have to engage in financial literacy and entrepreneurial training. So do not look at the blockpreneurship program as just building stuff for guys on the block to engage in. Most young men are part of a block now, those who are unemployed. If they're not part of a block, they pass by a block, they have family that are associated with the blocks. And I see this as a wider project of community empowerment, community enfranchisement of our young people. So I'm here this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, speaking passionately about what we have before us. This is not just a land acquisition, a resolution. This is about creating businessmen among our young people. The youth entrepreneurship scheme now have a duty to these young people as they build out these kiosks. They have a duty to ensure that they hold their hands. They have a duty to ensure that they engage them in financial literacy. They have a duty to ensure that we reduce the number of young men and women in prison. And I'm saying to you, Mr. Speaker, this is part of a wider mandate of the Ministry of Youth. And some of the areas, Mr. Speaker, that we intend to build out in terms of business, and I will list a few of them: retail, fruits and vegetable, clothing and dry goods. I am confident that the Minister of Agriculture, the member for St. Philip South, is indeed pleased, because when he hears how the blockpreneurship project will allow persons to plant produce root crops, this is geared towards, reducing our food import bill. And I would like that when we go to rural Barbados and building out these kiosks in terms of the block projects, that we indeed focus on agriculture, and not just on agriculture. We give those persons who have fallen through the cracks the opportunity to engage in technology as we seek to build out agriculture. So not just planting, but teaching them about hydroponics and aquaponics, and all of the technology that are first world. I just don't want blocks being built. I want blocks to be filled with information technology and digitizing its processes and offering its services via the internet. So it would please me to know that I go to Silver Hill, and I go to the Ivy, and I go to Britain's Hill, and I go to Parkinson Field, and I see these kiosks fully equipped with IT systems whereby I can go on their website and see what are some of the services that they have to offer. We have to take it a step further. And indeed, I know that was the vision of the former Minister of Youth and Community Empowerment. And when he spoke to me, he indeed articulated that vision. And I said to him, it is in good hands, Minister. The member for Christchurch West Central. So when we are looking at craft, leather goods, handcraft items, we have some of the best leather in the world. The black belly sheep leather from black belly sheep. These are some of the things. This was well put together. Cosmetology, automotive services, technological services, landscaping, bar services, car washing, tailoring, jewelry, animal husbandry. These are a list of the various disciplines that you will see these blocks engaging as we seek to build Barbados' block project. Mr. Speaker, I am one who was very critical of the last government, and there was a program by the last government, and it keeps slipping my mind the name of it. Community councils, that's what it's called? No, the constituency councils, whereby the community centers were closed only for meeting times for the constituency councils. And we have over 100 community centers in this country. Mr. Speaker, I declare to this Lord Chamber and I declare to the public of Barbados, there should be no community center kept closed in this country from today onwards without active daily and nightly activities. So we have to engage our young people. We have to engage our senior citizens. If we're supposed to build up global citizens, if we're supposed to empower our people, not just the young people, and we're doing it within communities, we have to ensure that we put the necessary infrastructure in place. And I am on a mission to indeed review every single community center in terms of its functionality and in terms of its use and its fitness for use, to ensure that we engage the minds of our young people, and ensure that we engage the minds of those persons who have fallen through the cracks, to ensure that we engage the minds of the families. Because when we engage the minds of the families, when we collect data on our family structure, as we build up or seek to build up this program, you're not only going out there on a block, but you're going out there to gather information on families. And when you gather information on families, what do you gather? Information on persons who are not working, information on persons who need help, information on persons who have mental health challenges, information on persons who indeed have other challenges, and indeed not only challenges, but we also building out our database on those persons who indeed have talent, but whose talent have been untapped as a result of their being left behind and their being not unrecognized in our society. So, Mr. Speaker, my few minutes here in endorsing the land acquisition at Bushall is to say to every single member of parliament, is to say to every single block, is to say to every single community center, is to say to every single family in this country that the role of the youth commissioners and the role of the community aides, while the former minister and the member for Christchurch West Central had it in his vision, I will implement it. We are coming to the families and we are coming to you, knocking on your doors. Gone are the days when we will sit down in an office as youth commissioners and community aides and seek to gather information on people within our communities. We have to get out there, be among them. The member for St. Michael East, I just listed your chaos as one of the projects within the Ivy, they call it the Back Ivy. And I know you are proud, the member for St. Michael East, to know that under this institution we have indeed given 6 or 7 businesses the opportunity within your constituency to earn a living. Now, when we are talking about the youth entrepreneurship scheme, that is part of the wider network of the entrepreneur ecosystem network. And indeed, I did see within the written document some of the key stakeholders, fund access, trust loans. Some of these businesses now, as a result of government policy, some of these businesses now, and some have gone already to acquire trust loans to start up their businesses. I heard the member for St. Thomas speaking about the trust loans. And indeed, we have looked at this thing holistically. We are saying we are not only building out the blockpreneurship program, but we are providing financing for these small businesses. This is a sector. This is a sector, the working class sector, that was ignored for 10 years in this country. These are people with skills and ideas, indeed, who are willing to contribute to the micro, small, and medium enterprise sector, whether they're young people, whether they're middle-aged people, whether they're senior citizens. But as a result of the nature of their financial situation, that sector was untapped. And that is why we, as a government, provided seed capital for programs like this to indeed become successful. And I'm certain that the monitoring and evaluation process that we will put in place within the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment, we intend to make sure that every single one of these projects become a success. We are not going to leave them by themselves. Constant monitoring and evaluation, that is what we were lacking in government over the last 10 years under the Democratic Labour Party. How do you assess whether something is working? How do you assess whether something is successful? You monitor, evaluate, and you make improvements as you go along. So, Mr. Speaker, I am indeed proud to be associated with this project. But I want to go further as we seek to empower the youth in this country. Again, Mr. Speaker, this lovely book, the manifesto Building the Best Barbados Together, we have articulated in our second bullet. It is for this reason that we are committed to allocating 5% of all government procurement contracts to businesses owned by young Barbadians. And I'm saying to you, Mr. Speaker, we have already put the necessary policy initiative in place, and we now have to implement this. And I will be pushing to ensure that our young people get their fair share of contracts in this country. I will also be pushing as we articulate that our young people, fully involve our young people in national decision-making process by installing at least one young person on major government committees and statutory boards. I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, this is indeed something that I'll be discussing with my colleagues. When we look at Barbados 30 years from now, you might be seeing Dwight Sutherland. You might be seeing the member for St. Michael South Central. You may be seeing the member for St. Philip South. You may be seeing me mayor. But, Mr. Speaker, my point, you'll be seeing the member for St. Michael South, of course, and South Central, and St. Michael East Central, and Christchurch East Central and Christchurch West Central. But my point, Mr. Speaker, the young people in this country are the leaders of tomorrow. So we have to invest in these young people. So having them part of our decision making and sitting on statutory boards and committees organized by government argues well for the future of this country. This morning, Mr. Speaker, at 9 o'clock I met with all the national coaches of this country under the National Sports Council, and I said to them, you're in the schools, the primary and the secondary schools. When they introduced me, they said, this is the most important person in the ministry, meaning the minister. And when I spoke, the first thing I said, dispel that notion. You, the coaches, are the most important people within the National Sports Council. You're the ones who interface with the young people daily, on a daily basis. You're the ones they see as their mentors. You're the ones they look to for guidance, not the minister. Yes, the minister, but you're the one interfacing on a daily basis. You're the one that we put to build a sports industry and to build a sports economy, whether it is by the elite, whether it's through community-based, or is whether within the youth. But my point to them is that the future of Barbados resides with the youth. And indeed, when you're within the school system, then you have a duty to this country as a coach. And indeed, some of them had wonderful ideas. I was impressed with the discourse this morning, and I would say to the Lord Chamber and to the public, our coaches at the National Sports Council are indeed knowledgeable, and indeed they are capable to build a sports industry in this country and a sports economy by empowering our young people within the primary and within our secondary schools. So I would want us to see this project, Mr. Speaker, as no whims and fancy project. This project has major goals: strengthening relationships within communities, teamwork. When you work within chaos, you can begin to cluster within various skill sets, and you can draw on the knowledge and the expertise that the other bring to support and to build a strong value system and a strong business and entrepreneurial ecosystem. Enhancing the culture of creativity and innovation among young people. We are now giving the young people the opportunity to be innovative, for us to tap into the skills and the ideas and the endeavors of the ordinary Barbadian. That is what this project is about. And we don't have to be educated at Harrison College and Lodge and Commonwealth in these schools. We are focusing on those persons who did not have the opportunity. Some did not have the opportunity for a sound secondary education. But you know what? They're skillful, they're innovative, they're good with their hands. And indeed, that's what this project is about. To reduce unemployment by converting as many blocks into economic enterprises. This is part of the micro, small, and medium enterprise sector we are talking about, that accounts for some 40 to 50% of GDP. We should be all excited about this project. To enhance youth mainstreaming by moving young men and women away from block culture and into mainstream institutions, and moving them into business. Redirecting our young people to using the community centers as social and creative spaces with community development aids that I spoke about, available to provide the support and entrepreneur development training. So we are building the blocks, yes, but we are then utilizing the community centers for our training of these block entrepreneurs. Creating the environment to enhance the self-esteem of marginalized young people. We recognize today in some quarters when you approach persons, they either do two things. They either retreat, or some of them get aggressive with you because they're putting up that block. So we as mentors and as policy makers, we have to recognize that when you go on a block and you see someone behaving hostile, sometimes you call that being afraid to communicate. You find that. Social workers know that. They may be afraid to communicate with you, so they see that as a means of defense. Begin to, create the language and use some adjectives to describe their situation and their being. And indeed, we then have to hone in. That's why we have the community aids. That's why we have the youth development officers, what they call the youth commissioners. I believe that name should change. Youth commissioners, youth development officers. We are developing our young people. Gone are the days we look at young people and call them youth commissioners. They're about developing our young people. So when we build these blocks within the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment, we have the resources indeed that will go into the community centers and create the programs for the sustainability of these blockpreneurship programs. So I'm saying to you, and I will repeat it and reiterate it, no community center in this country should be closed. We have to engage in wholesome activities within the community centers to empower our young people, to provide the necessary training for the marginalized youth, to build self-esteem, to build businessmen and women, whether old or indeed mature. So I am asking us to treat this program as a community empowerment program. Treat this program as one that is enhancing participation of our young people. Treat this program as one that is part of a revolutionizing the informal economy. Because most of these persons with the skills and ideas operate in the informal community. So see this as an opportunity now to formalize a lot of business in this country. So I am urging you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm urging the public, treat this block project as part of a wider empowerment of our young people, as part of a wider project to rid the blocks of indeed deviant behavior. Treat this block project as one of assisting families with the marginalized youth. Treat this block project as one of assisting in building out the micro, small, and medium enterprise sector. And indeed, treat this block project as part of this government's mandate of building global citizens through a financial and business literacy program. So, Mr. Speaker, I close by saying to you, the best is yet to come in the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Community Empowerment. And I want to end by congratulating the staff and the former Minister of Youth and Community Empowerment for leading the charge. And indeed, in the wisdom of the Prime Minister, I am here to carry on the good work that we have started in that ministry. I am obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable St. James North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak in support of these land and housing resolutions which are before your Parliament. I will speak mainly, sir, on the acquisition of the lands in Belplain, St. Andrew, but I would also touch on the acquisition of the lands for building blocks in Bush Hall, as well as on the botanical gardens, and generally on housing and land policy of the Barbados Labour Party. So the acquisition of the land in Belplain is, and I state up front, sir, of ancestral interest to me. Dame Ermitrude Bourne, my father's first cousin. Her father and my grandmother were siblings. And, you know, I probably would not be in elective politics today, but for that kind of family background. She is someone who I knew from the time I was very young. Both of my father's parents were born in St. Andrew, where she represented. Her father before her, sir, and hasn't been said yet here in this Parliament, her father was Member of Parliament for St. Andrew before her, and she in fact took over from him. So she had that background as well of encouragement into politics. She was one of 13 or 14 children. And it is when you look at that time, sir, 1951, when she was first elected, Uncle Dari, her father, could have, if he wanted one of his siblings, his children to take over, he could have offered any one of the boys, of the sons, but he chose Auntie me. And a small woman in stature, physically very small, but a large personality, sir. Tremendous personality, one of the most outstanding and commanding people that I have ever met in my life. And she has mentored, I know for sure, she also helped mentor the Honourable Member for St. Michael North, because he used to visit her as well certainly before he became a Member of Parliament, when he first ran, to get pointers and tips on electoral politics and how to win a seat. She was Member of Parliament for St. Andrew for 10 years, and these were the days, sir, when they had double member constituencies, and that was terminated in 1971, but each constituency had 2 seats up to 1971, each of the 11 constituencies. And then the city of Bridgetown had 2 seats, so there were 24 seats in those days. And on both occasions that she was elected to be Member of Parliament of St. Andrew, she was elected senior member of Parliament. So she won the most votes. I remember, sir, in 1956 when the late Sir Frederick Smith won, he knew he couldn't top the polls, and he has said publicly about his intention was to ride in just behind her, which he did to become junior member. And the magnitude of what she achieved, sir, has to also be looked at in the context that, 1951 was the first general election when they had universal adult suffrage, of course, one of the hallmarks of the Right Excellent Sir Grantley Herbert Adams, sir, bringing universal adult suffrage to Barbados, such that everyone was entitled to a vote, no matter the color of their skin as it was before or the size of their pocket. And she would have been elected as a woman in the first election after that, in a case where women were tremendously disadvantaged politically and for a long time had no vote. I mean, it would mainly have been women, black women, who could not vote before that time, even more so than black men, who were largely disenfranchised too, sir. And her period, her 10 years in Parliament, marked a period of tremendous social transformation in this country under the Barbados Labour Party, sir. I remember she was on television, an interview. It would have had to be around the late 1970s, early 1980s. Certainly it was the time when the Right Honourable late Tom Adams was Prime Minister of this country. And she, in half hour, 45 minutes, did an extremely fine job on the achievements of the Barbados Labour Party during that period. Not only, as I said, the universal adult suffrage, but removing legislation which located a worker of a plantation to have to live on the plantation, and when you left and got another job, you had to move your chattel house too, and all the social reforms, the holidays with pay act, the labor legislation, the development of an industrial platform for Barbados, development of a tourism product, the housing units that started within that time. I believe the Payne was one, represented here, of course, by the Member of Parliament for St. Michael's South East. The start of free secondary school education, sir, in that period with the 4 secondary schools, Grantley Adams and Princess Margaret and St. Leonard's, sir, and Parkinson. And that she was part of that legislature which would have passed all of those acts. And when you consider, as mentioned by the Honourable Member for St. Thomas, who mentioned, I think, that Dame Billy Miller was the first after her. Dame Billy was the first Barbados Labour Party female Member of Parliament after Dame Ermey, 25 years after, in 1976, when she won in the by-election in the city. But the late Gertz Eastman was in fact the second woman to be in elected Parliament. That was 1971, so a whole 2 decades passed after Auntie Ermey was elected before another female was elected to this Parliament. And so you look at her achievement and her entry into this Parliament, sir, within that context. Yes, that she had a father who she succeeded into that seat, but still a tremendous achievement. And of course, then followed by Her Excellency Elizabeth Thompson, present Barbados ambassador to the United Nations, who would be her niece. And that's the kind of political background that family, the Fosters, she was a Foster before she married a born, would have come from. And she, in fact, her husband, she and her sister married two brothers. So two sisters, two Foster sisters married two born brothers. And I commend the present Member of Parliament for St. Andrew for his initiative in bringing, at least being the prime person in bringing this resolution to this Parliament, and in insisting that, the Cabinet agree and that Parliament pass this resolution to make her residence, Dame Ermey's residence, a national museum. The present Honourable Member for St. Andrew has done a lot in terms of recognizing Dame Ermey. The memorial lecture, which has been going on, I think, last year was the third year. A memorial lecture held at Aline School in the heart of the constituency in commemoration of Dame Ermey, and the Honourable Member's constituency office, I believe it is named after her as well. It certainly has a big picture of her at its location. But, Dame Ermey is totally befitting of this honour and this resolution, which will seek to make a national memorial of her home, because we have to have these examples to our younger people, to let them know that you can achieve whoever you are once you focus, once you're determined, and once you stay the course, that you can achieve anything in this Barbados, whether you're male or female, whether you're born in the country or you're born in the city. And these monuments to our heroes have to stay present before the mindsets of all of us, especially our young people. So of course, Dame Ermey has received other honors. As we know, the former East Coast Road is named after her, the Ermey-Trudbourne Highway, and has been said earlier, of course, particularly by the Honourable Member of Parliament for St. Thomas, the committee room in Parliament in Bridgetown, the Home of Parliament, was renamed after her in December 2018, herself and Dame Billy Miller, the first two of the finest individuals, and not only females, two of the finest parliamentarians this country has seen. So in terms of I'm proud to help continue the legacy of the Foster family, sir, in terms of politics in this Barbados. I have those fine examples who I named before me to try to come up to high standards, sir, which I hope to do credit to someday. The building blocks, sir, has been spoken of both by the former Minister of Community Development, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central, and the present Minister, the Honourable Member for St. George North. South, sir. Right, so I won't speak long on that. But certainly, sir, this is, and the acquisition of the land at Bush Hall is, of course, a catalyst to develop building blocks in that area, sir, which takes into account, of course, the constituency of the Honourable Prime Ministers and your constituency as well, sir, bordering it. And so this is fundamentally important for our youth, to whom we owe an obligation to help develop. As has been said, not everyone can be an academic or will be an academic, sir. Not everyone either may be technical in the full sense of the word, but their brains are good, they're street smart, and we have to develop their entrepreneurial skills, sir. And I know when I was an opposition member of Parliament shadowing education, sir, I mentioned that I said in Parliament that I feel that we should teach young people from age 6, 7 how to be entrepreneurs in school. The then Minister, sir, of Education laughed and said, you know, that is a joke. But we heard, it was mentioned earlier here today, one of his famous statements about cutting throats made in this Parliament, sir. So that was the mindset of the last government. I'm sure that the vision of the present Minister of Education, the Honourable Member for St. Michael's South East, will see that we have to do more entrepreneurial training of our young people from an early age, sir, to give them the opportunity to create jobs for themselves when they grow up. And it won't only be jobs for themselves, but their friends and others in their community, their families, sir, because a government, a governance structure, an administration cannot create jobs en masse for people. I mean, what, 26,000 odd jobs in the public service, 25, 26,000. And, you know, we realize that we can't sustain that all the time. At one time it was, I think, 29,000. And the last government cut by about 3,000, 4,000 over their 10-year period. This administration had absolutely no choice when we came into office in late 2018 to also make redundant just over 1,000, because public service can't sustain jobs. The political directorate has to create the environment where people can grow, young people can grow, that the potential of their talents can be fully realized. And the Building Block Initiative is certainly one of those areas that has to be promoted. And I listened carefully to what the Honourable Member who last spoke, who now has charge of it, the Honourable Member for St. George South, sir, said that we have set it up, the concept, sir, in pursuance of manifesto promise of the Barbados Labour Party last election. It now has to be implemented. But for it to be fully implemented, sir, assistance has to be given to these young people at all levels, the technical level, the financial level, the entrepreneurial business level, sir. And I trust that we will do all that can be done, that Cabinet will devise policies which will see this extremely noble concept fully operationalized, sir, because, as I said, we owe it to the people. The concept of giving 5% of government contracts to those within the communities and helping them build up within the communities, and also, sir, part of that is people with disabilities, has to become actualized, because there's no use having that as a policy, but then those whom the policy is supposed to assist are not able to fully access the benefits, sir. And they're not going to be able to fully access the benefits unless they're assisted and facilitated in so doing at every level. by not only the government structure, but by the private sector as well, sir. I know that the former minister, the Honourable member for Christchurch West Central, had told me that St. James North building block will be one of the next to come on stream, sir. I know, I have full confidence that the Honourable member for St. George South, whose ministerial mandate they now fall under, who spoke very passionately just now on the issue, will continue that policy and decision, and that we could soon see building block established in St. James North as well, sir. Because in St. James North, certainly, as I said last month in this Parliament, has been the constituency that perhaps has been the most affected by COVID-19. In the heart of a tourist belt, sir, 80% plus of the households have been dislocated in terms of job, because hundreds of people, perhaps about 2,000 people in St. James North used to work in some area of tourism. And therefore, to give some of these young people an opportunity now to get back into mainstream life, they have to be assisted with this kind of project, sir. And this kind of project also has other aspects of development of the individual, sir. Because tied in with this, as has been said earlier in this debate, are issues of development, of teamwork in your personality, working together with other people, your ability to resolve conflict, because if you're working in a cluster with others in terms of jobs and employment, there will be conflicts, sir. You're not going to agree with your partner, with those who you're working with at each and every stage. So you have to be able to resolve conflict, and there would have to be training in that as well, sir, and how to solve problems, because, I mean, when you have your own business, your own enterprise, there will be problems with it. Problems in life, period, far less in terms of your business, sir. And you will have ups and downs, and therefore we have to also ensure that they get training in problem solving. So these are fundamental life skill issues, which I am sure that the political administration will focus on as means to develop the personalities and the character of those in the building block schemes. And as we all know, sir, in St. James North, I do that within my foundation I try to do it on an annual basis. I have to sit down now and see how we will do it this year, what with social distancing protocols obviously in place. We did one last year, highly successful. Most people, as usual, had a job within the first 3 months after the conclusion. A lot of those jobs were lost, so we have to do another one again. But it's that kind of program, Life and Work Skills program, that has to be replicated throughout the country in terms of assisting the individuals who we would want to be beneficiaries of the Building Blocks program. In terms of the botanical gardens, sir, again, I commend the Honourable Member for St. Michael East, sir, who, as Minister of the Environment, would have taken the initiative in starting the botanical gardens. So, of course, it has to be developed more. I'm sure that the present Minister, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central, will continue that, because it is vital for any country that takes itself seriously, sir, to have green spaces, places where people can breathe, where they can go and relax, cool out. I mean, you used to have these from the Romans, used to see about people going and after work in those days going and relax, sir. And this is vital for us, and that's why, of course, we have to be fully supportive of the initiative to have a park in Bridgetown, in the Probin Street area, around the monument for the Right Excellent Clement Payne, sir. I know that a lot of people don't feel that this is necessary, sir, but a country, a government doesn't only have a duty to its citizens in terms of economic development, sir, recreational development and areas where you can just go and expand your mind and your thought process and relax and spiritualize has to be part of a country's development as well. So housing and land is one of the very major challenges that governments of Barbados, not only post-independence but pre-independence too, have had, sir. We can never fully satisfy the land and housing needs of all our citizens. At any given time, there are thousands of people, thousands of applications at the National Housing Corporation by residents of Barbados for land and or housing solutions. Thousands. I believe at one time there were close to 30,000, certainly over 25,000 applications. It is impossible for any government to do it. It's perhaps one of the three major social challenges of our country, together, of course, with unemployment at this stage. And a government has to therefore facilitate in every way possible the creation of housing and land solutions for its people. And the private sector has to step up in place. It means, even if it means incentivizing the private sector, sir, one of the hallmarks and achievements of the now late Prime Minister, sir, the Honourable, the Right Honourable Owen Arthur, the former member for St. Peter, sir, was the initiative which he took, sir, together with the present Honourable Member for St. Andrew, and who was Minister of Housing then in the first term of the Right Honourable late Prime Minister's Prime Ministership, as well as the Honourable Member for St. George North, who was Parliamentary Secretary during that time. One of the main achievements of the late Prime Minister would have been the creation of mortgage facilities, 100% mortgages, facilitated by the then Barbados Mortgage Finance Company Limited, credit unions and other financial institutions, whereby people were able to access even the deposit, the 10% deposit on the purchase of the land or the house, and become property owners, sir. That kind of innovative thinking that...
Your Honourable Member has 2 more minutes.
Thank you, sir. That we have to do again to ease the challenges that we face with so many people rightfully, sir, wanting to own a piece of the rock. It was mentioned earlier, the derelict buildings. I know at one time it was said, and I don't believe that the amount has been reduced by that much. There were about 1,700 derelict buildings or on lands in St. Michael alone, sir. And we have to find a way, a creative way, legally and otherwise, whereby these can become housing solutions for our citizens and residents. A lot of these buildings, sir, spots of land, as you would know, sir, as an attorney, are tied up in legal problems, because a grandmother died or a grandfather leaving this land, didn't leave a will, boy, and had about 6 children, and the 6 children, what, 4 children each, and troubles over who is the owner. But we have to find a creative legal device, an administrative device, whereby these properties can be released for the benefit of housing solutions, because they're no use to anybody. As we know, the Land Tax Department, as called now Barbados Revenue Authority, occasionally will sell out some of these properties for arrears of land taxes, but that obviously is not a solution at macro level for all of these derelict buildings to become marketable for ownership by those who need and who rightfully desire ownership of the piece of the rock. So, sir, these 4 resolutions are all in fine order. They will contribute to the cultural development, political development of Barbados. In the case of the one for the acquisition of the land at Belle Plaine, will contribute to the development of young people in terms of the ones at Bush Hall. So will contribute to the development of the environment and the greening of Barbados, the recreational aspect of human development in terms of the botanical gardens, and I'm fully in support of all of these resolutions that are being debated before your house today, so I'm obliged to you.
Our member for St. Andrew. Mic is not on, sir.
Mr. Speaker, I'd first like to thank the Honourable Member for St. James North, who is closely related to Ermy Bourne, for his treatise on Ermy Bourne, which has obviously made my task a little shorter. I knew Ermy for almost the earlier part of my sojourn in St. Andrew. I was somewhat surprised when I was first introduced into St. Andrew at her lively nature. I thought that I was dealing with a very old woman who had long past her time, and I certainly used to enjoy the days when myself and my wife would travel to St. Andrew and spend the time with Ermy. I regret that I did not actually keep certain mementos of those journeys, even though I still have a few, and I would communicate with her from time to time with respect to the politics in those days. She used to remind me that she was the only living member of Parliament who was not receiving a pension. I always remember that. At that time, Sir Ronald Mapp and Sir Menzies Cox, they had been resurrected by the former Prime Minister Tom Adams and brought back into the cabinet. But in those days, members of Parliament were not paid. But having been brought back into the cabinet, the earlier period counted. And she went to her grave regretting that no one seemed to have remembered that aspect of it. People probably thought that she was well off, but I used to, on my visits, she used to comment with respect to the struggling times, even way back then. I knew too that before she died, she wanted, well, I say before she died, I recall the week that she died, she called me almost every day that week. Come, you better come and see me. And she used to call me George Payne, nothing else. You better come, young man, you better come and see me. And I remember that week, And I was very busy doing some chores home, and I did not come. It is as though she had a premonition. Apparently we had discussed the question of her property, putting it in a foundation, doing her will and whatnot. She had already made a will, but she wanted to have that will change so that her property would go to some foundation. I had encouraged this as well, but it so happened that that was not to be. And I really regret that I did not actually do what I should do. But as an attorney yourself, you know, very often somebody tell you, come and see me, and you do not see them, especially if you're dealing with succession and the ancillary areas, wills, trusts, etc. Me and that person passes. You feel bad. I remember I went to the funeral, and I felt as though I had done her a wrong. And the subsequent events with her, with respect to the division of her property and what transpired, certainly went against the grain of what Ermi would have wanted. And because of my knowledge of the situation, it is for that reason that I decided, or rather that I tried to right the wrong that I had done by not visiting her. We got the Ermi Bourne Highway named after her, and I was, at the time too, I was somewhat surprised when she agreed, when we decided to rename the Walker's Bridge after the late, another member of Parliament, L.B. Braffett, that she came out and gave the feature address. I mean, and her feisty nature was also apparent on that occasion. I regret that even you, Mr. Speaker, sometimes make the mistake of saying that you're going to the East Coast Road, and people forget that that particular road is named the Ermi Bourne Highway. In addition to the renaming of that, or rather to having that property being turned into a museum, I would also like to see some sort of statue somewhere in St. Andrew commemorating her memorable feat. I think her winning formula has been passed on to all members of the Barbados Labour Party. And I think it is something that we probably don't even realize, in that every single member of the Barbados Labour Party who has contested a seat and decided to go back again, they won their seat. Not so with the Democratic Labour Party. Every single member of the Democratic Labour Party who won a seat, I'm speaking of the women, who won a seat, actually lost their seat. Gertrude Eastman followed her. Maisie Barker Welch followed her, and the latest was Esther Bayer-Sakou. And they all won and lost. And all the members of the Barbados Labour Party who actually participated actually won and won. And in the case of Cynthia, it is like the honourable member for St. Thomas. It is like about 10 out. Now, it is ironic, Mr. Speaker, that we are actually having a debate with respect to the stewardship of a lady like Dame Ermi, a lady who has been given the dignity that she deserved. And I cannot speak in this debate unless I really refer to the events of the past 2 weeks. Ermi was allowed to remain as a parliamentarian with a certain degree of dignity, and she left with that dignity intact. And the worst that all that we ask as politicians, as members of Parliament, is that you allow us to keep our dignity. That's all. And my father had a famous saying, respect is due to a dog. And I couldn't understand what he meant until later in life. I recall when he died, I penned his eulogy. I did not read it for obvious reasons, because I get too emotional on occasions like these. Even though I had an argument with my brother, I know he couldn't make the time, and he didn't. he started to cry at the end. But another brother told me in respect to that saying that my father had, that I disrespected my father by using that type of language. Respect is due to a dog. And I would like to repeat it here, because I believe that if I have been a member of the Barbados Labour Party since 1967 when I was at Commonwealth School. I've contested elections for the Barbados Labour Party under all Barbados Labour Party Prime Ministers. All Barbados Labour Party Prime Ministers. And I believe, and I've also served at the highest level in this party. And I believe that there is a certain minimum level of dignity that should be afforded to me. A minimum level of dignity. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that at this stage of my political life, I should not be called by a Prime Minister to be told that she is going to the nation in the next 2 hours to make what she would call a cabinet reshuffle, but really it is a removal from cabinet. We came to office, Mr. Speaker, at a time when, as you know, this country was reeling because of the maladministration of the Democratic Party. And we all operated as a family, as a team. And we've only been in government for 2 years. The first year, very little could have been done, and there was nothing, there was no money to do any housing. I mean, I'm a little surprised that since last week, I am seeing certain stories on social media with respect to what could have been done. With due respect to the honourable member for St. Michael Southeast, somebody even suggested that I was overshadowed by her. Certain comments referring to the fact that no houses have been built, and that I had indicated that, and editorials, and I don't believe that the person of you could really do editorials in that nature unless they were framed. It is like, I don't want to use the Donald Trump language, fake news. But obviously, editorials and comments being staged unfairly with respect to my stewardship. I heard the honourable members spoke in this House with respect to the housing program. I have a passion for housing, no two ways about it. And I recall during my first term or rather the first time that I was Minister of Housing, we had some excellent programs. It was the glory days of housing, and they're all initiated, not all initiated by me as Minister of Housing. The mortgage, the program under the Housing Credit Fund, the $50 million bond issue, the negotiations with the banks, get 100% mortgage. Nothing has changed. And despite the fact that there are some people who have been spreading wild rumors, and they have been deliberate about my being in a wheelchair, about my being ill, I believe that at this particular point in time, I enjoy the best health for anybody my age. I mean, and I don't have any health issues, and I wonder whether or not these things were not orchestrated in order to make it appear as though I was way past my time. I am not. But Mr. Speaker, there are ways of doing things. The same thing could have been achieved, only if it was handled a little differently. But to be treated like this, I had to ask myself, what? I mean, was it worth it? Was it worth it? The sacrifice that you have made, and then to be treated in this undignified manner is, I just don't know what is the reason for it. There's anything more that I have done that I could have done, and there have not been no failings on my part. And you had bad administration by the Democratic Labour Party, poor economic situation, not being able to do the things that you as Minister of Housing would like. Then you have the intervention of COVID. And you use the opportunity in order to get a program in place. And sometimes in order to get a proper program, it takes sometimes 2, 3, sometimes you could spend 5 years trying to get a proper program in place, because what used to be normal before COVID is not normal anymore. So you have to sometimes to scrap all of those plans that you might have had. And I'm not saying that a person should be in any position forever. But I believe that the period that I have been around the Barbados Labour Party, it counts for something. And I cannot be dusted like that. It is something that I just don't understand. I just don't understand it. I mean, at a time when we as a team, as a party, I've got to know members of this party. I mean, I've been involved in a lot of organizations, a lot of institutions, and somehow or other, whenever I get involved, I don't like getting involved in institutions, because when I get involved, at some point somebody wants me to lead it. And one thing I like about this organization is I've been around for a long time, and it's the only organization that I've ever belonged to that I didn't have to lead. I've been involved with, even at my community service level, Kiwanis International, at the highest level. And I'm talking about years ago. And I don't think that, that having had that sort of record, that this is the way that, that one should be treated. And today, I'm happy for today, because this is part of my work coming to fruition. The work of the Ministry of Housing is a very complex one. The work of the Ministry of Housing doesn't just involve you turning up and turning the sod to build 9 houses for squatters, and you think that is the end all of housing, simply for a photo op. That is not the way how we operate. You have to make sure that all of your planning is in place. No amount of urging could get me to go and do a photo op, turning the sod to do 9 houses when you know you have the whole country in terms of housing. And as the editorial of the Nation, I stand by what I saw, what I said. The only revision that I would make when I was reported as having said that the housing situation cannot be fixed in 20 years, and I was dealing with the outstanding 35. Look what we're dealing with: 35,000 housing solutions at National Housing Corporation, and that has nothing to do with the 35,000 people who didn't come forward. The amount of squatters. You all remember, St. Michael East don't like to use the term squatters, and I agree with him. And then those people, those innocent people who cannot afford to buy land at market value. These are the issues that we have to deal with. And now COVID, something that nobody ever expected. You cannot make decisions. To make certain decisions, like the decision that was made 2 weeks, at a time like this, I would not like to say it is irresponsible, but I can't get in a word, Mr. Speaker, maybe you can help me. But it was totally uncalled for. There's nothing special with respect to the changes that I have seen at a time like this. And you are going to tell me that after 40 years, after all of the work that I've done together with my colleagues, after the type of family and the iron parlor that we have built around ourselves in terms of making sure that this country get the best that it deserves, you are no longer part of the transformational team. Somebody will have to tell me otherwise. I do not have to question the decisions that have been made. We live in a system, the former Prime Minister used to say that Barbados, and he was very blunt about it, that this Westminster-style government allows us to choose the dictator that we want. You hear what I say? The Westminster-style system of government allows us to choose the dictator that we want. But how about when we don't get the dictator? How about when we get the dictator that we don't want? I mean, and it is unfortunate, totally unfortunate. And as we look to housing, as I said, it doesn't only involve centered around the building of houses, housing solutions, and then the other complex issues, the registration of title. We had a situation where years ago, over 30 years ago, we had an individual who had no knowledge with respect to registration, land titles, conveyancing, who told us that the whole registration of title would be completed in 5 years. And we are now almost 40 years past that. And we are no longer near to having a solution to that problem. I mean, and these are things that you have to thought out, and you cannot think them out. You cannot come with a solution to these problems. In 2 years, the question of the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act. The Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act, however much revolutionary it was like a man in a hurry. You remember you had to make that change from one from more than one tenant to more than 5, together with some other little changes that have to be that you have to look at. And then there's a question of the glebe lands, the question of the funding for the surveys, because you are telling me with respect to the glebe lands that you would like to have these matters resolved as a matter of urgency. But the glebe lands, the churches are in a very funny position. When you talk about the glebe lands, is the tenantries in the church areas. You have situations where you are called upon to convey land, but at the same time, the price at which you are conveying the land is more. Or rather, the amount of expenses that you have to pay in order to get that land sold is more than the actual value you're getting for it. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of those lands, the glebe lands, have been stalled. Remember, for St. George North, he is always in the forefront with respect to having those matters resolved. The question of property management, almost on a daily basis, some this particular officer want a change in accommodation. I mean the amount of complex issues that you have to deal with. You are the chief property manager in this country as Minister of Housing. And thank God that we've got some very good officers in the ministry. And I know on occasions like these it isn't good to single out anybody, but we have members of staff who are sometimes ridiculed. Good members of staff. I mean, and I don't think that you would be vexed with me if I single out somebody like Nicky Smith. Those fellas who work 24/7 in order to make sure that our plannings are on par. And then there's the weekly meetings. I mean, you have meetings almost every day. Sometimes the officers minister another meeting again, and then when the meeting, site visits. Remember for St. John, could tell you the time, the amount of hours. I don't know. I would like to know what else we could have done. I wish the new Minister of Housing well. But I notice already he has started on the wrong path because he wants to build 500 houses in 2 years without actually looking at what there is to be built. Well, if he is a Barbados scholar, I don't want to be one. I don't want to be one. You have to think out these things and think them out carefully, Mrs. Speaker. In keeping with the initiative that I took years ago, where not only for St. Andrew, when it was in another dispensation, when I was Minister of Public Works, just like what we are doing in St. Andrew with respect to the Ermy Bourne Foundation, or rather before I mention that, I would like members to know that we have set up a foundation. I've already spoken to fairly influential persons, and I hope it may very well be possible that we might have to, subject to the building being transferred to the Ermy Bourne Foundation, that we might have to, the property has to be vested in the Ermy Warren Foundation. And it wouldn't cost, it shouldn't cost government a cent. And in this connection, I believe somebody mentioned this morning the question of the Frank Ward building. I believe that all 30 of us have important individuals in our constituency who have served the community well. Not just at an international level, but at a parochial level. And we should do the same. And there are a number of persons in the constituency, business people, who are willing to help us in this regard. I said that in an early dispensation, I had done a similar thing with respect to the renaming of the roundabouts after important people. And I would like to see the same thing happening. I don't want to, I don't think we should wait, because you remember under the last administration, you had the rush to rename a lot of buildings and schools after persons who had no identity or no identification at all with the particular structure. It is what it is, and obviously we can't go back there. But I think that we should look at areas, and in this connection, I have my own suggestions, in addition to the suggestions which are before the ministry with respect to the acquisition. Certain of my initiatives, like the acquisition of property owned by Rihanna, the property owned by the former Speaker, former Prime Minister, the Right Excellent Eric Barrow. But in my own constituency, I grew up in Orange Hill, in St. James. Nowadays, I guess that sometimes when we say we grew up in a place, we don't want nobody to know because of what is taking place, that we come from there. I have a friend that come from Black Rock, and he don't like people to know that. But I identify with Orange Hill. But my father before me, I remember, used to talk about famous headmaster Chappie Crick. And he had 3 sons, 3 children, who were headmasters of educational leading secondary schools in Barbados and Jamaica. And he revered Chappie Crick. And I hope the Minister of Education is listening, because I don't want to hear that the St. Silas School is renamed after Kenny Best. I'm serious, because I would, the Chappie Crick Primary School, I want to hear that. I'm telling you, the roundabout in St. Andrew, I must say that I got licks for that, because they said that I put a roundabout in St. Andrew and only 5 or 6 cars passed there. But the important thing is the roundabout is there, and it's serving a good purpose. And Father Gatherer lauded me for putting that roundabout there. So I want to hear about the Father Gatherer roundabout. Corbin's Village indirectly is after a man named Homie Corbin, but nowhere is that information readily available. So I want to hear about the Corbin's Village, maybe the Minister of Public Works. We have a new Minister of Public Works. I don't even know the ministers now, because there are so many. There are new ones too. Minister of Public Works, maybe the leader of the opposition, who normally keeps these things in his head, because he keeps so much things that he shouldn't keep in his head. He knows how many times I speak in this parliament, but I'll tell you, I only speak in this parliament when I have something to say, because 90% of the times he gets up to speak, he could sit down. But I am not speaking unless I have something to say. But you were on good ground when you were talking, except that you should not refer to the member for St. Andrew. If you have something to refer to the new Minister of Housing, you refer to him, because you were saying that he was very short, and I am shorter than him. King Street, Lester Vaughan, and I think that the member for St. Thomas.
I hate to interrupt the honourable member while he's in the floor. Obviously, he listened from outside of the chairman, he misunderstood something. I was not reflecting on the fact that he spoke very little, because I understand quite clearly, in his wisdom, he speaks only when he has something important to say. I was seeking simply to caution the new minister, don't speak unless you have something to say, and that something makes sense, like 500 houses in 2 years.
You can turn off your mic,
Thank you for that
Honourable.
clarification. I really
Honourable
wanted,
Leader, you can turn off your Leader Opposition. You can turn. Continue, Honourable Members.
I wanted that clarification, you know. The roundabout at Lancaster. Lionel Craig, I recall as a little boy, we used to worship Lionel Craig. Some of us don't even realize that we are being worshipped by some of the little boys and the girls in our constituency. I mean, we just love that. We just love that man. It's true that we see him a little. The older you get, I guess that people, even his political adversaries, would try to paint him a little different. But Lionel Craig, I'm telling you, as a schoolboy, was like a god to us, and we worship him. And I remember one year, we had to go. My youth group, because I was very actively involved in youth groups in those days, and we had to go to Trinidad to some function, and we didn't want Lionel Craig to know because we had something coming up the following month, and we wanted to attack him for that visit. And I sitting down at home one day, and Lionel Craig turned up with a check. He said, "Well, I know you went there and you're hiding something from me, but anyhow, I still making a contribution to the trip." That is the type of man he was, and that meant a lot to me. That meant a lot to us. And I would like to see that roundabout at Lancaster being renamed after Lionel Craig. The road, Rock Hall Road, you know, we have our own heroes. Not only the people who might make us proud internationally, but the local heroes. I don't know for you, Mr. Speaker, but there are some people that I used to tell myself I would like to be like him. I recall a fella went to Combermere School, and when he went to school, he was in sixth form. And his name is a guy, Paya Brooms. I don't know if many people would know him, certainly not in this chamber. And he was an athlete. He used to play first division cricket. And he went to sixth form, and he did well. And, you know, I did my best to be like him. I went to sixth form. I played cricket for Combermere. I was a Barbados athlete. The only thing is I didn't do well like him. And there's people like that one remembers. And in Rock Hall, there's a man named Hilary Beckles. You all know him by the name of Sir Hilary Beckles. And the people in Rock Hall are proud of Sir Hilary Beckles, his achievements. He has actually made people be aware of that there's a place called Rock Hall, a backward parish. My opponent during the last election, she did me a favor. She made me get all the votes in Rock Hall because she said that the people in Rock Hall backward. And that's why they voted for the Barbados Labour Party. And for that I'm grateful. I'm glad that she made that comment, but because I did get all the votes. And finally, Shorey Village. I know that Conrad Hunt, it is very timely that we've just had the passing of Sir Everton Weeks, and now the former Prime Minister Arthur. I certainly will have a lot more to add to what I have said, because I haven't said anything yet. But Conrad Hunt is like a legend in St. Andrew. And you know, sometimes when you are looking at, you're watching cricket with the West Indies team, you wondering if there can be a reincarnation of Conrad Hunt in order to help the West Indies in their misery.
Yeah, when you see John Campbell and Craig Bradford and others.
Exactly.
That is correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. You know, but you have to allow these youngsters to know these people. Conrad Hunt Drive, renaming of Shorey Village, or Savannah Road. And I have a lot of suggestions, but I'm not going to come in here, and I'm not going to, just to please somebody, to get in here and try to speak on every subject, to speak for 10 hours and whatnot, simply to please anybody. There's a member, and there's a person who used to come in here, who has exited these chambers. He used to come in, he used to complain all the time in my last dispensation, complain about the roads in his constituency. And whenever he come, he used to talk about the Judge Gap, the Judge Gap, the Judge Gap, the Judge Gap. And my permanent secretary tell me, you could silence him. I said, how we could silence him? Rename the Judge Gap Kelman Drive. And I renamed the Judge Gap Kelman Drive. He stopped talking about the Judge Gap. But I mentioned him because, Mr. Speaker, he came in here. I don't think there's anybody in the history of Parliament that has spoken more than him. And he could only be remembered for one thing, an airport in St. Lucie. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable, can you turn off your microphone, please? Honourable Senator, can you turn off your mic? Honourable Sir Michaelis.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon to everybody, all my brothers and sisters, all my colleagues. Let me place the caveat in. You are my brothers. You will be my brothers. And I said to a group, I will not leave thee or forsake thee. Friendship is friendship. Let me, the Honourable Member for St. Andrew, my friend, my good friend, we both face the same fate at the same time. I think he has said enough. And as you spoke, I said to myself, I hope that the other members open their eyes. I hope that they tune their ears. I hope that they know what they saw and understand what they heard. And it's fundamental in underpinning this exercise today. I am not going to speak in any way grounded in any form of fanaticism. As long as I am in this House of Assembly, sent to the House of Assembly by the people of Barbados, I am not going to speak in any subjective way or for the sake of any institution. And I am here as the parliamentary representative of St. Michael's East, and I will defend that until eternity. I want that to be very clear. And the Honourable Member of the Opposition is also one of my constituents. Now, the member for St. Andrew must face these charges by me. Since I've been in this House, he's invited me to St. Andrew many times to address his branch. You never honor it. Then, on one year, he invited me to give the Honourable lecture, which I really regretted that on that occasion I could not do so. I would not speak today unless I make some reference to Honourable. I know the Honourable Member for St. James South? North. Lay claims to special succession rights and treated us to a biography of the life of the family and how these special privileges were handed down through the years, speaking about the Honourable Liz Thompson and things of that nature. And that is good. That is good. But I think what is most significant about Honourable is in very difficult times against male chauvinism. What was the other word used? Misogyny? And misogyny. Where men believe that women should elevate them to human beings, but they felt that women are secondary to men. Honourable emerged out of those kind of negations, that kind of mindset, in a very difficult time. Everybody, most of the males, even at the level of Parliament, and a number of people who perceive themselves to be significant others in this Barbadian society, felt that, no, a woman, a black woman, should never be in the House of Assembly. And it is no easy fight. That she was responsible for creating that cleavage in the political space so that other women can emerge and reach the top of the political ladder in the halls of Parliament. Like most of us who experienced the acts a few days ago, I don't know how any human being can feel glee, any form of joy as a result of having faced the shock that we all face. But probably I am a little different. I didn't cry. I didn't agonize over it because I always believe that there's a future ahead. And my mission, nobody can truncate my mission, what I intend to do. There are a number of people in this country, which one of my friends once described as white shadows. These people hide in the dark and do all types of illegal things in this country. And black men who have been elevated to higher office than women allow these things to continue over and over. I am not convinced in any way that these people mastermind all that you have seen going on. Because my intention is to make sure that wrong things must be made right in Barbados. And I am not going to stop, and if they're smiling, tell them I am in here for 3 more years. And as long as I am in here and I identify these forms of discrimination, I am no person that talk about I don't see color. I'm not going to talk foolishness. Only a man without a brain can say he don't see color. I'm not going to tell you that. These people, and I know who they are, you know who they are. We don't own much land on the beach. We know that. You don't notice this, that don't own land on the beach. Unless it's a beach boy lineman on it. These people want special privileges on our beaches. And you men in here with muscles and testicles don't know how to stand up and say it is wrong. During the days of COVID, a man goes onto a beach with strong protocols and emergency legislation in place. Little black boys sent to jail for 3 months because they were on the streets after 8 o'clock. And a man could sneak up on the beach with a big excavator and dig up all the beach lands and plant trees across the beach. And then you could hear people saying he could tell a newspaper and be facilitated by a newspaper with journalists that ought to be able to talk, all right, saying the man's asking for $30,000 because the minister who was misinformed. This little peanut brain boy, along with an attorney at law, know that they've done wrong, and in order to reduce my judgment to a lack of understanding of the law, he seemed to be pardoning me. Pardoning me, a member of Parliament that thousands of people voted for, over 3,004 in the last election voted for, because I took action against him and his company for doing what is wrong. I strongly believe behind all this is the action of these people using force in order to get what they want. My friend has a different perspective, and I appreciate his perspective, and that is something that we would like to see. that if you have a perspective on something, and I have one, I treat yours with great respect, and you treat mine with great respect. I am not dogmatic about anything. I am a reasonable man. And I expect other people who have been elevated to high office to be reasonable people. So everybody becomes disappointed when these things happen. But in many cases, people who find it offensive sit quietly in silence and don't express any dissatisfaction about it. Well, I want the records to show I cannot appreciate that either. I'm not going to go into everything now, but that beach struggle is not over, and it will never be over as long as I am alive. And I said it to them before, whether I'm a minister or not, any time you go back on the beach and do it, it will move from being legal and social to a political battle without having to ask for any partisan support. It is not going to happen here. The same individual is now operating an illegal quarry. In the meantime, we are putting pressure on Jose, and other scrap man for doing the things that they're doing, and this man is operating illegal quarry in this country at present. And you want me to be silent on that? It is not going to happen. Some people accuse me of playing a quasi-judicial role because I saw the wrong. I also know the behavior at the level of the judiciary. I did nothing wrong. It was a practice, but I think it became an issue because you all were seeing black and white. Not justice, you all were seeing black and white. So as long as a white man has to pick up waste on the beach for doing exactly what other black boys do every day and are forced to pick up waste, accustomed to it, is a common practice between at least two ministries. Two ministries. All of a sudden, it was front page news. And I personally believe that all of those forces decided that this must be the end of this Minister of the Environment. Well, I'm sorry, Barbados. If you expect anything different from me, it is not going to happen. So you can reduce me from minister to cash boy. If you can so bring back such a post, it is still going to happen. And I am not going to upset these things happening across Barbados because the people elevated me to the office as an MP, and subsequently the Prime Minister felt that I was suitable at that time to be a minister. If that position no longer holds in her mind, I just go back to the people. I wanted to say this to you too. Nobody, no one human being can determine the end of my political career. I did not get a vote from anybody outside of my constituency. That would be illegal. The people who voted for me will determine that, not by any journalist running around, a photographer, and selecting certain people to say if I am tall, short, old, young. None of those variables. I've heard a lot of theories in here from black people in this parliament that disconnect themselves from people that are seniors, but go begging the people for votes all the time. But nothing in society is valuable if you're an old person, but you have the required lucidity to be able to ask that body at the day of or the eve of an election to use your wisdom and select the best candidate among those who is offered to the general public of Barbados. But a judge could be 400 years old, or the president of the Senate could be 4,000 years old. or Queen Elizabeth could be 2 million years old. This is how this society is functioning, you know. And the foolishness is circulating from the day of birth to death. And people believe that they're saying something that is so fundamental. And that's what we have. Sir, I know that this discussion doesn't allow me the amount of time to talk about class differentiations. Now, what I expect from petty bourgeois people, what I expect from the proletariat, the lumpen proletariat, it doesn't allow me the time to talk about that because that is alien language to some people. But I wish I had that opportunity because you'll be able to understand the dynamics of what we are experiencing in Barbados. I came to Parliament to make a difference. I don't want to be the most efficient in a system that is rotten. I don't want to prove that I build more houses than anybody. I don't want to pretend that I can work with 16 members of staff or one. I come to help with a transformation in this society. A society, all of these small island development states, a society that are people who were dehumanized, or people who were deculturized, or people who are disconnected from reality. I come to make sure that I redress those issues in society during my lifetime. I don't want to move bush to plant flowers out of gardens. That is not my job. I look at human relationships. That land once belonged to the plantocracy. I respect the state by whatever means necessary that is legal for transforming that land out of the plantocracy who dehumanized me and people like me, and the state having possession of that land, and now the very people who was enslaved and were not human, had no persona, are the very people now is responsible to make it an institution of significance for the sake and the benefits of ordinary people like you and me. I hear somebody say when you travel, you see botanical gardens. So in other words, Barbadians don't even know what a botanical garden is, for those who never went on a plane. And likewise, those of the plantocracy believe that there's no way a little black boy from in the Ivy, from around my Lawrence and Licorice Village and Titchburn and those areas, could have a vision to transform it from a plantation to a botanical garden. Same land space, 254 acres, and the piece that they now acquiring. A little black boy has a vision of what constitutes the botanical gardens. I understand the social relationship between me and my type and those who ran it before. And this is not indictment based on any form of contempt. This is a reality. And if you don't talk about the reality, then you continue to go around and round in circles and you don't understand what is happening. You had a lot of mysterious latent agents determining where you should plant Bonavis, where you should plant slip. And even when you plant slip, the mentality between them and the plantation manager believe that the only vision that a black man can have for it is to plant potatoes and yams. So people accuse me of planting potatoes, and there's no potatoes up there. None. People felt that I should have a body of persons, probably from one of these societies in Barbados, with people who don't have much to do on a daily basis, that can take the leisure time and walk around and learn the names of each flower, and they perceive themselves as scientific and as visionaries, and they know how to transfer the physical space from a plantation to a garden. These are the people who had the horses on the land, you know. And I'm not talking about the black men there now that mimicking the body. I'm talking about that. These are the people who walk, when we walk and they had a whip, we had to run without shoes, and they had boots up to the kneecaps. So they had a horse, we had a mule and a donkey. I'm talking about relationships. That is how I see biodiversity. That is my perception of it. That is what I see. When I go up in there, I know which tree, and I ask the experts. They tell me which tree came from Europe. They tell me which tree comes from Africa. That is my concern. Because in that botanical gardens, I want to make sure that some trees from Africa, and I was glad that the Prime Minister and others brought some seedlings and seeds as well from Kenya. But I want to be able to go up in there and say, this is the African tuning, this is the baobab tree. I can make my people proud and give them some understanding that we live in a civilization. It had an ecology like all other ecologies long before slavery. Or not these people that distort history and make us believe that we were always less than human, because it's that ideological rationalization that they have used and still continue to use through the education system to make us feel a sense of inferiority and incapability to do the things that are so required in the garden. I was trying to see if we can bring back different species to the garden. I was trying to see if I can bring a kind of indigenous art to the garden. The iron art that was done by Bannister. Trying to see if I can reconstruct a donkey cart, so that when you come to the gardens, you can tell a story. This is how we traveled before. Not only to do work, but sometimes a man and a woman will journey into Bridgetown well-dressed, sitting on a donkey cart. I was arguing for the restoration of donkeys in the country. And I have a little spice. I refer to restore and ask back to the gardens itself. But these people don't want that. They want something that they can carry up to, what's the place name in England every year that they go? Chelsea. So I didn't even know where Chelsea is. Off me Chelsea Road. I didn't know that. So this boy was not suitable for the job. And I wish the Honourable Minister well. I really do. And I hope that at least he does not distort. He does not distort a vision, in my view, and in most people's view, of our type, of what we need to develop in the gardens. I did it with equivalent to no capital. I did it by asking corporate businesses to help, because I had to get the job done. I did it by asking people to come and do it without pay in their gardens. And I felt that I was doing something of significance, so I would journey to the gardens almost daily, because it was a place of peace, and that is what it ought to be in general for you and for anybody else here. You got a garden, when we got a little extra land, from the 4,000 square feet of land, you got that. What botanical gardens you can have? You have to have something to plant, some carrots, some beets, a little lettuce in the back, and it's called it backyard farming. So the program of backyard farming don't come to them, they come to us with the backyard farming program. But when you put me in charge of 254 acres of land, I'm going to work magic down there, man. And if I had a mattress that anybody doing it, must sleep down there. Well, it's about a transformation. Well, other activities would occur, of course. Other activities would occur. But But I mean that. I really mean that. That you have to be able to feel an integral part of the development of that garden in itself. It is for research. I go there, I read. I go there and sleep. I walk through it. I exercise through it. I take friends there, hear their views on how we should move forward on the development of it. So I had that attachment to it. Not that I can't let go, because I'll still be part of it. I'll still be coming through there. I drove through there with my friends up there yesterday, with no malice in my heart, Minister, in any way. I am not a paper doll. I am not a paper doll. I don't get envious of anybody. All of us have been given an opportunity to do this work. All I need is for people to understand what I've been doing and don't try to say things sometimes to make it sound as though he's a stupid little boy spending too much time with the botanical gardens. I thought that you'd be happy to know that a minister is on the site. Not a minister sitting down behind mahogany and looking up in the top of the office and saying 630 lights spinning like when you do the old house or 70 down the road, chandeliers or shit. I don't even know how to spell that. When I go in the office, I go and do certain things. And if there's nothing else to do, I go on. So I end up in the sanitation. I go up there and me and the fellas, I dance with the men, dance with the women. We laugh and talk. We have a healthy relationship. I can account for my stewardship. I only speaking about the gardens, but I also did work in collaboration, not even with a man of my complexion. If you come there sandwiched between the Basel roundabout, the Basel statue, and you move to the west is a big place there called. And I work with, I think his name is Mr. Agil. And we transformed that entire area. I went to Oystins. I worked with the MP up there in relation to transforming the Bay Gardens up there, spending the government's money up there, the taxpayers' money, not the government money, taxpayers' money up there, from black people. When I'm fighting for that word, though, black people I was spending the money upon, concerned about the washrooms. I don't play. Any minister here tell you the truth, when they send things to me at my ministry, and you come and tell me you want the beach to be transformed into the hands of white people. No way! It cannot happen. It cannot happen. You had no land, landless people that renting apartments or houses. The state ain't even got the money to transfer the ownership. The state can't construct a house because we broke, these small island state broke back into a form of dependency as a result of the economic struggles that we have to face. Poverty on the increase significantly, far beyond anything that we have seen. You had the unemployment in slavery, but since the abolition, this is one of the highest rates of unemployment and poverty. Put it on the agenda, not trying to come up with micro issues when you are micro solutions, when you are experiencing macro problems. I don't get too elated about, I'm thankful, Minister. I'm really thankful for the 3 sugar shacks that I got in the Ivy. And I'm thankful that 3 people will get some work. I don't get inflated with enthusiasm, right? That overnight I have built for all the last 2 or 2. You think I feel good about that? And all of these people still rushing to me and say, get one for me. Can you get some work for me, Minister? Can you get a job for me at NCC? Can you get a job for me in the Botanical Gardens? We can't sit down and come to a conclusion how glorious it is if we even build 10 shops at less than, what size that is? 2 meters by 2 by 3 meters. 2 or 3 meters or less. The size of the shops. We have built about 6-inch concrete blocks. We built out a concrete board. Life estimates dropped below probably 10 years. You think I can feel good that is all that I have given. I want to be able to see more significant things occurring across the landscape. It's all right to go through, I almost call it orgasm. It's all right to go through a situation where you begin to feel sweet. You feel sweet, and a whole government feeling sweet in 2020 in a modern Barbados because it built 3 units there, 3 there, and 2 somewhere else. Oh, glorious program. What glorious program? What? No disrespect to the minister, because you can only function within the finance constraints which you have to face. Now, if you could have built 30, I know you would. But tell the people that we are going through difficult times. We inherited it's the truth. But if you confuse minds, that we believe that we are doing as great as we would like to be, then you have to pay the price when the people use their own judgment. Look, I would love to build 60 more of these units. But this is about the money that was allocated to me. And sometimes when I want the money, I had to fight real hard to get the money, although it was voted for in the estimates.
Y'all remember has 2 more minutes. You know what?
I
I remember noise between you planes and you helicopters and thing. So I just warn you beforehand. You have 2 more minutes, honorable member.
Minister, Mr. Chairman, I'm so sorry. Look, our responsibility, and it is in the manifesto. Don't pick out a program out of one ministry, and a program that, as I said, we have massive international influences that are affecting how we do business. Financial institutions, IMF, all kinds of institutions that determine if you want to make a progressive step tomorrow morning. Let's say you blacklist you, pull back. You got to come up, sit down, and as big as you are, that you're autonomous, you got to sit down and try to do something to please these people. So it's a form of modern slavery. Isn't that we don't have the vision? Isn't that we can't put programs in place? But you also have to put the programs in place that some sovereignty that consider itself to be superior to all other states determine how much money we spend, how we spend it, if you get an airline from this place, if you don't. Sometimes when you got the problem with the COVID and you need the testers or anything so, another country hold on when they hold on. That's how we have to live, sir. That's how we have to live. Our duty is more complex than looking at simple things and rejoicing that we have done things that are fundamental. The journey ahead is going to be rough. If you don't accept it as rough and you just want to conform to its dictates, you will have a record of contributing nothing. You're going to have to come in confrontation with a number of systems, a number of institutions, a number of individuals if you're going to make change. You're going to be called all different types of things if you want to make those changes. There are going to be a number of persons, since you don't have access to sometimes first-hand information, there are going to be people who are going to distort things. I know it. Because one time they want to sell me as a madman. They tell the minister, they tell the representative of St. Andrew that he was in a wheelchair. They talk all kind of things. They say we want to commit suicide too. And my son rushed home and woke me and asked me, Daddy, I come home, I getting these messages saying you committed suicide. People do all these things to you. And I was trying to tell people recently did it to Garvey. They say he was dead. You know, as a man wake up and hear he dead. See it in the newspaper front page. A responsible media saying the man died and the man read, you could catch a heart attack. We are here to transform. And you're here to transform in difficult times. The owners of the property, owners of land, some of them don't want to give it up. They make sure that they get the land appreciated over a number of years, and in many cases stolen land, but they push the prices up over a number of years, and if the state wants to buy it for a specific purpose, up price. Some of them buy the land from the state for a specific purpose, and in less than a month want to sell it to somebody for a price that far beyond what they purchased it from the state for. And then nobody wants to take action. I am here with even limited power today in comparison to what I had yesterday or yesterday, but I still have a voice. Right now the voice might be hoarse. It ain't hoarse because I was talking too much, it's because I went to the dentist, and I drank some peroxide and thing. I was trying to rinse something about my mouth suddenly. So I end up with these problems. But I'm telling you, sir, I think that I just want my colleagues to be men. I want them to be women, strong men and strong women. I want them to be able to say, right is right and wrong is wrong. No woman even wants a man that don't have testicles. And if you got one, you're still ain't a man. And like they got a lot of people here got one. We have to make changes. The people are watching us. And you know the same young people that they're talking about? They're sharper than you think. Because the daily discussions are about the things that I am talking about. They question the ability and the courage of ministers every day.
I remember your pattern hasn't changed at all.
Yes, sir.
Your landing gear still has problems. Even though Aliyah got problems, you seem not to have problems, sir. You're landing. There are new airlines, sir. Please land. New airlines coming into Barbados, sir. Please land.
The energy is coming from solar.
Yeah, but that is understood, sir.
Well, sir, I just want to make the point, and I do appreciate the time and the flexibility that you've given me. But I just want to...
your time is ending, you know, sir.
Yeah.
I remember your time is ending.
Yeah, so I just want to thank you very much for the liberty which you have given me in order to try to see if I can clarify some of my feelings to the General House Assembly and the people of Barbados. Thank you very much.
I remember Mr. Mike Sophie's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the sitting until 5:15 p.m.
5:15? The question is that this honorable chairman will be suspended until 5:15 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended until 5:15 p.m.